Even though the booster set is labeled as 3, it is actually the 4th set released in the English format. Like I mentioned in my last video, it is due to Bushiroad altering the product release schedule, which released set 6 as the 3rd set instead. Because the English schedule was changed, there was about a year
of difference between the Japanese release and the English release of set 3. Then, set 6 was released a full 7 months after set 3 in the Japanese format. By now, you might be thinking, well, set 3 sounds so old, outdated, underpowered by the time it was released in English. Who would even buy this? However, what made this set important was that it gave us one of the big 3, which were the 3 powerful decks that dominated the Japanese format during this gap of time. Curious to see if this set lives up to all the hype and want to know more? Stick around and I'll fill you in. This set made its English debut on August 11, 2012, featuring a total of 82 unique cards. This set also continued a similar pattern from the past set, where Bushiroad included cards to the English version previously released as promos in Japan. For this set, it was just 2 cards, Circle Magus for Oracle Think Tank, and Bloody Calf for Dark Irregulars. Overall, the set supported a whopping 8
clans: Royal Paladin, Oracle Think Tank, Kagero, Nova Grappler, Dachikaze,
Dark Irregulars, and 2 brand new clans making their debut, Pale Moon and Dimension Police. Dimension Police was a clan that was more Vanguard focused than Rearguard focused, as its game plan was to power up the Vanguard as much as possible. We don't get to see too much of that just yet, as they only received a total of 4 cards this set. Kagero and Nova Grappler fell in the same boat, only receiving 4 cards each. Royal Paladin and Oracle Think Tank, on the other hand, fared better, as they received 10 and 11 cards respectively. The main stars for this set were Dark Irregulars, who received 19 cards and its first wave of support since its debut back in set 1, and Pale Moon, who received 18 cards. Pale Moon even debuted with a set of triggers as well, making it actually playable on its debut. This set was also good for Dachikaze, as the clan finally started to resemble, well, legitimate clan, as it received 12 cards, which included a PG and 1 of each trigger unit for the clan. Demonic Lord Invasion is a pretty important set for me personally, as it debuted my favorite clan, as well as my all-time favorite card. For most, it's remembered as this awkward set that felt like they should have got it sooner. But many also remember this set as the one that elevated Oracle Think Tank to the moon, as the goddess of the full moon Tsukiyumi debuted here. Bushiroad even gave a nod to this unit by giving out a free limited edition Oracle Think Tank plastic deck case with the purchase of
2 boxes of Demonic Lord Invasion. August was a pretty pivotal month in Vanguard's history. On August 1st, we finally saw the Barco restriction we've discussed in previous videos finally be implemented. Players could no longer use Barco as their starting Vanguard, though they could still include it in their main deck. We also had the second ever promo pack for English releasing in July, not August, but I forgot to mention it before, so we'll touch on it here. As a refresher, promo packs were packs that contained 1 card out of a possible 3 that you would typically get from playing in shop tournaments. This pack specifically included Holy Disaster Dragon from Royal Paladin, a grade 3 that allowed you to discard a card from your hand to gain an additional 5k power. Sword Emperor Dragonic Valblade from Kagero, a grade 3 that gained
5k power if your drive check revealed a grade 3 Kagero unit. And finally, Knowledge Drunkard from Dark Regulars, a grade 2 that allowed you to put a card from your hand into Soul to draw one card if its attack hit a Vanguard. One of the biggest things to occur in May instead of August was the creation of the North American branch of Bushiroad USA. Bushiroad is a Japanese company, but created Bushiroad USA to help it with its growing interest and demand for products overseas. Bushiroad was very active during this period of time, appearing in many conventions and hosting events and workshops. Heck, you could even see CurlyHairedVanguard banners at American Major League Baseball games. We'll discuss these events in future videos, but for now, let's break down the cards released in Demonic Lord Invasion. Of all the clans supported in Demonic Lord Invasion, 3 of them only received a total of 4 cards. We'll go over these first. Kagero's 4 cards in this set included a new critical trigger, Blu-ray Draco Kid, giving the clan access to a total of 3 different critical triggers. Since you can only play up to 16 triggers in your deck, with a maximum of 4 of them being heal triggers and only 4 copies of each card total, this new critical trigger meant you could play 12 critical triggers and 4 heals if you wanted. Very different from today, where the standard format is limited to 8 critical triggers. They also received the grade 1 Dragon Dancer Ludris, who gained 3k power if your opponent had 2 or less rearguards, a type of requirement that we still see on cards today. There was also the grade 2 Flame Edge Dragon, who could show charge 1 if its attack hit a Vanguard. The most notable card, however, was the double rare Dual Axe Arch Dragon, a grade 3 that gained 3k power if your opponent had 2 or less rearguards. Dual Axe was popular in Kagero decks as a rearguard that could hit the magic number of 13k attack without a booster. This will become very important when fighting against Cross Rides, a simple ability that we'll talk about soon. If you remember from the previous video, the runner-up of the 2012 World Championship qualifier in France used 2 Dual Axe and 4 of the Blu-ray Draco Kid in their list. I also have this list here, which was submitted to me by a player that was playing at this time. You can actually see all 4 of the cards we just discussed in this list. With that said, this set mainly provided Kagero with a new critical trigger and the Dual Axe to use against Cross Rides, but did not really change how the deck was built or played since the last time we covered it. Nova Grappler's 4 cards included Cannonball, the clan's 5th sand trigger. This meant that Nova Grappler players could play 16 sands as their entire trigger lineup if they wanted to, and still have an extra left over. However, they didn't need to max out their stand triggers because this set gave them the Deaf Army cards. Deaf Army Lady and Deaf Army Guy are a pair of grade 2 and grade 1 respectively that could restand when your Vanguard's drive check revealed a grade 3 Nova Grappler unit. Because the card didn't specify a grade for your Vanguard, this effect could be activated as early as turn 1, and could be combined with the last card they received in this set, the grade 3 RRR, Ultimate Lifeform Cosmolord. Cosmolord could rest 1 of your Nova Grappler rearguards in order to give itself 3k power. You could use this effect as much as you wanted, as long as you still had standing Nova Grappler rearguards to rest, leading to a massive Vanguard swing. Then, you'd be able to restand those rearguards from your Vanguard, potentially checking a stand trigger or checking a grade 3 Nova Grappler for your Deaf Army card's restand skills. That said, at the time the more well-used main Vanguard for Nova Grappler was the Beast Deity Assured Dragon from the earlier set, Breaker of Limits. Players added the Deaf Army cards in their Beast Deity decks, as with their skills and Azure Dragon's skill, you could result in almost
all of your rear guards restanding. You can see this in action in the list that won the 2012 Malaysian qualifiers here, where the Def Army cards were played at almost max copies. The Def Army cards provided much needed utility for the deck, as it could threaten the opponent with rear guards that could all stand in a single turn thanks to the combination of stand triggers, the effect of Def Army cards, and the effect of your Azure Dragon, an effect that was not tied to Limit Break. Dimension Police debuted in this set with only 4 cards. Similar to Bermuda Triangle and Great Nature before, it was barely a debut. The clan received a vanilla grade 0 starter that had no effect, a 8k grade 1 vanilla, and an 8k grade 2 that gave 2k to the Vanguard when it attacked. It also got the most popular and famous Dimension Police card in
広い世界が俺を呼ぶ正義の心が炎と燃えるライド超次元ロボ大勇者
Dayusha was a grade 3 with 10k power with a single effect. If Dayusha had 14k power or more at the beginning of your attack phase, it would gain an extra critical until the end of that battle. Because this effect activates at the beginning of your attack phase, it did not factor the boost mechanic into Dayusha's power. So you would need to use effects from cards like the Mass Police Grandeur in order to have enough power. Dimension Police will become more fleshed out later on, but for now, this is all they had available. Unlike Dimension Police, Tachikaze finally got a bit more fleshed out this set. Prior to this set, Tachikaze only had a total of 8 cards, 4 from set 1, and 4 from set 2, and nothing from set 6 or our first extra booster, Cavalry of Black Steel. This set gave Tachikaze a total of 12 cards, including access to each type of trigger for the clan and their own PG. The clan also started to form a clearer identity with the introduction of the new Grade 3 triple rare Ravenous Dragon Gigarex. Gigarex was one of the not so sought after triple rares in this set, sadly. Gigarex gained 1k power whenever a Tachikaze rearguard was retired or put into drop. So a game plan started to center around retiring your own rearguards or benefits. We've seen hints of this in the first grade 3 for the clan in set 1, Tyrant Defrex, which would retire one of its own rearguards on attack to gain power. We saw similar concepts in Great Nature and Shadow Paladin, but all 3 clans would go different ways with how they retire their own rearguards and have varying levels of success. For Tachikaze, the retire effect was often referred to colloquially as Eat, due to the cards being dinosaurs. The Grade 2 and Grade 1 Savage Destroyer and Savage Warrior had the same effect as Gigarex, and you had a couple of options that would activate their effects after being retired or eaten from previous sets. There was also the Raging Dragon Blastoise from this set, which could call another copy of itself from the deck after being retired. So you could get an additional attack that turn. This is the same effect that Raging Dragon Sparksaurus had as well, with the same cost to discard 1 card from your hand. However, the trade-off was that these cards had less attack than usual, with the Grade 3 being 9k and the Grade 1 being 5k. While this wave was appreciated, it didn't really help the clan out enough. With the altered release schedule, these cards were underpowered by the time they reached the English format. Due to this, there were no tournament results from Tachikaze in the Championship Series. I can confirm, however, that there were players that brought the deck to compete, at least, thanks to data provided by Bushiroad. While I don't have a topping list, I was able to get a list provided to me by someone that was playing at this time. You can see this list here. The main game plan here was to use Defrex to eat your rearguards for power and use their effects to replenish the board or your hand. After this set, Tachikaze would not get supported until set 8, where it would get a whopping 20 cards. Next, we'll go over the clans that were supported pretty well in this set, but also, without further delay, we can finally start discussing one of the big three. Due to the altered release schedule that they themselves were rumored to have caused, we won't get the other two of the big three until early 2013. We get the first one of these now, however, the goddess of full moon, Tsukiyumi, who was included in the 11 cards OTT got in this set. These cards also included the Tsukiyumi Ride Chain, which were the set's most sought after chase cards. We discussed ride chains before, but they actually debuted in this set. As a quick refresher, ride chain is an unofficial name given to sets of cards
from grade 0 to grade 3 designed to work together, allowing players to search for and ride the next card in the chain, while often boosting the Vanguard's power if the previous chain cards are in the soul. However, Tsukiyumi had a very unique ride chain. The grade 0 Godhog Ichibiyoshi lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck during the beginning of the ride phase to search for the grade 1 Goddess of the Crescent Moon Tsukiyumi. If you find her, you can ride her. The grade 1 and grade 2 had the same effect as well, which meant you could just ride cards from your deck and not from your hand. The remaining cards would then be placed on the bottom of your deck in any order. Even though it may seem minor, if you never shuffled your deck, by grade 3, you would know the order of the bottom 12 to 15 cards of your deck. The grade 2 of the ride chain, Goddess of the Half Moon Tsukiyumi, also allowed you to Soul Charge 2 when ridden, bringing you closer to this bottom layer of cards, which was called a stack, since you could stack a bunch of triggers at the bottom of the deck to tap into later in the game. Finally, the last card in the ride chain, and one of the big three, was Goddess of the Full Moon, Tsukiyumi. She was an 11k base Vanguard and would actually lose 2k power if you did not have the grade 0, grade 1, and grade 2 of the ride chain in your soul. She also only had one other effect, where if your soul had 6 or more cards of her clan,
crack one of these open and just get started. We have here this Royal Paladin card, whose name escapes me, and of course the Aichi and Gwyn the Ripper in the cover, because I think they just didn't want to show up Tetsu and Asuka yet from the anime. So let's take a look here and see what we've got here. So we've got ourselves the Raging Dragon Sparksaurus, Dragon Dancer Ludris, a Dark Queen of the Nightmare Land, so finally a trigger for Dark Regulars, as well as a heal for Pale Moon, and we're going to get our rare here in the Ravenous Dragon Mega Rex, which is just a vanilla for Tachikaze here. Let's see if we can get something cool here. I'm really honestly just hoping if I can get my favorite card of all time here, and if I get her in SP, I will yell. So we got ourselves here Borgol here, then we got ourselves Flame Magic Dragon, a lot of, focusing with soul in this set. Stand trigger for Tachikaze, as well as a crit for Pale Moon, and we're actually going to get ourselves the Hades Ringmaster, which is the first ever starter for Pale Moon, and it looks so cool in the foiling. Look at that. That looks so amazing. We were, I guess, spoiled back then, because like nowadays in Standard, every single rare has the same exact foiling. And that one there looks really cool. There's the card on the back of the pack, the Swordsman of Blaze Palmedes here. Pretty cool. Got ourselves our first Dimension Police card here, the Mass Police Grandeur. Super cool looking card. We got a crit for Kagurao, as well as a crit for Tachikaze, and another Mega Rex here. Cool. And it would be great to see a Tsukiyumi, honestly. Not even for like card value, just to have it here, right? We got this insane hungry clown eating like a plane or something like that. Another Grandeur. We got the first ever Dimension Police starter, the Worker Pod Saturday. Has no effect, unfortunately. Got another crit. And then we're going to get ourselves the Demon of Aspiration Amon. This looks so cool, especially on the camera, right? The camera's really doing it justice because it looks so cool. See what else we've got here. Open up the next pack. Would be really excited to see an Amon, actually. That would be kind of cool too. Speaking of which, we've got Poet of Darkness Amon here. Flame Edge Dragon again. We got the Karenroid Daisy. I really love the art on this card. Got ourselves this Stand Trigger, and oh yeah, this card's really cool too. The Imprisoned Fallen Angel Saraquel. Very cool card. This is sort of a Genocide Jack or Brutal Jack clone, where it has restraint, can attack, but if you Soul Blast 3, it can attack to the end of the turn, and if it's boosted by Dark Irregulars, it gets 5k, and it's 11k base as a grade 2. So even though it can't attack, you can still use it to intercept, if anything. And if it's your Vanguard, your opponent has to deal with an 11k Vanguard. And I got ourselves the Decadent Succubus here. The Guardian, Oracle Guardian, Red Eye. A stand for Dark Irregulars. This crit again, and we're going to get the Alluring Succubus. Probably one of the hottest Vanguard cards of all time. But you can only really see the full art in concept art or in the anime, because here the art on the actual card does not do her any justice to how it actually ended up drawing her, I should say. Hope you guys don't mind. I'm trying a little bit of a different format today, instead of just being heavily edited, and I cut out everything in between where I do the cool and then cut to the next pack. We're gonna just try and do this straight, see how it works. I've been trying a couple of different ways to do this in between videos, unboxing videos, right? Then we got ourselves here the Bloody Calf, which was actually a promo in the Japanese version, but we got it included in the set. So this actually says Counterblast 2 if you have a Dark Irregulars Vanguard on Riot or Place, and then you can retire grade 1 or less Rearguard. So not the greatest skill, especially since there is no countercharging for Dark Irregulars just yet, but hey, retire is retire. We got the Dark Metal Bicorn here. The black looks really nice here. We got Battle Sister Vanilla here, and we got Dark Queen of the Netherland Dynamite Juggler. Oh yay, one of my favorite cards. There is another card that you will hopefully be able to see me put together here, but this is the Torquis Beast Tamer, who unfortunately, unlike in Vanguard 0, is only 6k base, but she gets 3k if you have the Crimson Beast Tamer in your soul. So, Crimson Beast Tamer is my favorite card of all time, and if I can get her in SP, that'd be great. I already own 4 copies of her. getting her an SP would be insane, especially if I pull it and on video. Got ourselves the Secretary Angel. Always love the art of this card. This guy looks really cool here. The Rainbow Magician, the Candy Clown, and we're gonna get ourselves the Blastosaurus here. I think the first one was Sparkosaurus, but this is Blastosaurus here. It's a 9K grade 3 that if you retire it by an effect, essentially you can call out another copy of itself by discarding 1. So it allows you to easily extend into an extra attack, but of course it's only 9K, so you gotta have to go first or something like that in this era of the game, right? Gonna get another Palmedes, another Sparkosaurus, another Vanilla here, Spiral Master, and oh wow, we're gonna get our first double rare here in the Swordsman of Explosive Flames Palmedes here. Looks super cool. Very sought out card. Actually, this is a triple rare. Sorry about that. I don't know why I thought this was a double rare. Very sought after card originally, because if you have 3 Royal Paladin, either rear guards or including your Vanguard. Actually, no. If you have 2 or more, including your Vanguard, that are grade 3 Royal Paladin, I should say, then this gets 3K, which allows it to hit the illustrious 13K of hitting into a cross ride without the need to have a booster. So that works out really well, especially with like Soul Saver Dragon. Then we've got ourselves here the Galahad here, which is a ride chain for Royal Paladin, Savage Destroyer. Really like this heal trigger from Tachikaze's art, looks really cool. We got Savage Shaman here, and then another alluring succubus. Really loving the rare foiling. It almost makes me feel better for the fact that we've only pulled 1 triple rare and nothing else. We'll put that on the side here. But let's see what we've got here. We got ourselves another Dark Metal Bicorn. Like the like shading and the darkness, this looks really well. It's really simple, but it just looks really well. We got ourselves here Elephant Juggler. Always thought this card was kind of funny because it's like a giant clown juggling elephants. Hey, we got a Tsukiyumi here. We got grade 1 and goddess of the Crescent Moon Tsukiyumi. We got Alabaster Owl, and we're gonna get another Sarasaquel. Okay, we're almost halfway through. Here we've got the the right side of the box. Almost done here. We got ourselves another Succubus here, another Faithful Angel. Got ourselves the Stand here again. I got ourselves Victory Maker. I love this card just because like its name is insane and it's this crazy looking bird. So cool. Then we're gonna get ourselves the Barking Cerberus here. Pretty cool looking card as well for Pale Moon, but it's just their 10K grade 2 vanilla. It's the last pack from the right side, so we're halfway through now. Hopefully it'll mean we'll get something good. We got another Savage Destroyer here. Another Ludris. This is a new one. This is the Blitz Ritter. Crit for Dark Irregulars. The 5th stand for Nova Grapplers at this point. And we're actually going to get the Vermilion Gatekeeper, which is actually going to be the first starter. Maybe not, but at least the first good starter, the first playable starter for Dark Irregulars. Alright. Next up, we got ourselves the rest of the packs here. Still nothing too crazy. I think I accidentally mixed up the order here. Let's see. We got ourselves another grade 1 Tsukiyumi. Gonna get ourselves the Cursed Doctor. I like the art on this as well. Looks really cool. Gonna get ourselves the Brontosaurus, the grade 1 Galahad, and then the Skull Juggler here. Very cool. For Pale Moon, that just says, on place, so charge 1. Gonna get ourselves again the grade 2 Galahad this time. It has the same effect as the grade 1 of the Tsukiyumi ride chain. So they both look at the top 5 for the next card in the chain, except this one says when you ride over the grade 3 soul charges, but the grade 2 Tsukiyumi does the same exact thing. And we're gonna get ourselves another Candy Clown, and oh wow, we're actually gonna get a double rare here in the Arc Bird. Always really like the double rare foiling as well. This is gonna be the PG. Perfect guard for Tachikaze. So you discard a Tachikaze. If you have one of your Tachikazes being attacked, you can guard with this perfectly. So the attack will not hit regardless of the power. Very cool. Very, very cool. So that's one triple, one double. So not the best pack so far, but I don't know what the guaranteed pull rates are for these types of boxes, because I know nowadays in modern Vanguard you get at least 1 or 2, or no, I think it's at least 5 per box, right? Yeah, I think it's 5 triples per box or something like that. But I got the Prisoner Beast, another for Dark Irregulars, another Ludris, another Dark Queen of the Nightmare Land, and hey, there we go, another double rare. Complain enough and you'll get what you want. So this is the Mirror Demon. Unfortunately, it is not the double rare for Pale Moon that I wanted, but this is the Mirror Demon. This is sort of an Alice clone, so it's an AK grade 2, that if the attack of this hits, if you have a Pale Moon Vanguard, you can counterblast one, put this to soul and call out another card that's not itself. So pretty decent for the most part, especially in the early game. But you know, it's AK, so it's kind of hard for it to hit. Gonna get the grade 2 Galahad, followed by the grade 1. Then we're gonna get ourselves the Vanilla again, the Rainbow Magician. Oh, we did it! Yeah! We got Amon. Very cool. Demon World Marquis Amon here. Ooh. So this is a 10k that says during your turn, this gets 1k for each Dark Irregulars card in your soul. And you can counterblast one, put a Dark Irregulars rearguard into soul, and your opponent chooses one of their rearguards and retires it. Ever wanted to get support for your deck but don't want to wait for a main booster release? Fear not, because we have the release of the first ever English extra booster in Card Fight Vanguard history, Cavalry of Black Steel. Much like the previous video, we actually got this set out of order, as this is the third ever extra booster, but it was given to us as the very first one. Originally, I was going to cover this together with the set 6 Breaker of Limits in one big video, but I cut this out for time. The reason I wanted to cover these sets in one video is not just because they were released so closely together, but also because cards from both sets created the most used deck for the first ever Card Fight Vanguard Championships for the English format, Spectral Duke Dragon. Interested in what I'm going on about? Let me give you the deets. On July 7th, 2012, the first ever extra booster in the English format was released, Cavalry of Black Steel. As I mentioned a few moments ago, this was the first extra booster in the English format, but was actually the third one released in Japan. We would eventually get Extra Booster 2 later in 2012, and Extra Booster 1 way later. This set had a total of 47 unique cards, and supported a grand total of 7 clans. Those included Royal Paladin, Oracle Think Tank, Shadow Paladin, Gold Paladin, Kagero, Spike Brothers, and Mega Colony. The change in the English release schedule did result in this set introducing Shadow Paladins to English for the first time. Shadow Paladins was a very popular clan that had a big role in the anime. There was even an entire set featuring Shadow Paladin, but we wouldn't get to see this in the English format until the end of 2012. Shadow Paladin only received a grand total of 2 cards this set, one with no effect, and the other a grade 3 with Limit Break, which could only use its skill if you retire 2 other Shadow Paladins for the cost. This meant you would need 2 copies of the one other Shadow Paladin that existed in the English format, or all of them. This was the main gimmick of Shadow Paladins, retiring its own rearguards in order to gain power for effects. Of the remaining 6 clans, Gold Paladin, Mega Colony, and Spike Brothers received the most support. Let's go into Royal Paladin next. They received a total of 5 cards. One of these cards was actually in the first ever tournament promo pack in Japan. There was also the Twin Shine Swordsman Maharas, which was an extra grade 3 rearguard that gained some power, but the most notable of these 5 was the White Dragon Knight Pen Dragon. This was the first ever Limit Break unit for Royal Paladin and had the effect that it could ride another grade 3 from the top 5 of your deck at the beginning of your main phase. This initially didn't see any competitive play when it came out. Most Royal Paladin players were still using the Soul Saver Dragon with Barkle as the starting vanguard. As mentioned in a previous video, Royal Paladin was going to receive a restriction that barred it from using Barkle as the first vanguard. This restriction was announced 3 days after this English extra booster was released and wouldn't go into effect until a little less than a month later. Warrior Paladin gets hit pretty hard from this restriction, as in the English format they did not have their support from sets 3, 4, or 5. 5 being the one that made this deck one of the big 3 that we keep talking about. Granted, it became one of those big 3 with a deck that did not need Soul Saver Dragon, but we wouldn't get that set 5 until 2013. There will be a Royal Paladin list that manages to top in the Championship Series, but we'll discuss it in more detail in a future video as it uses a lot of cards from set 3, the very next main booster releasing in English. For now, you can just have a quick peek at this list. It was of course focusing around the Soul Saver Dragon. It ended up playing one copy of the Knight of Determination Lamarok from this set, but only at one copy, along with another one copy of a Knight of Silence Gallatin from set 1, mainly just using these as 10k vanillas. Argo Think Tank received a total of 4 cards, but they all had minor effects. Omnimuji gained power if you had more cards in your hand than your opponent, a similar effect to Battle Sister Mocha from set 1. Blue Scaled Deer could Soul Blast 2 and draw 1 card if its attack hit. The same effect as made in a Libra from set 1, but with 1000 less attack and a different cost. Petal Fairy and Omniscience Madonna could both draw 1 card after discarding 1 card. These were okay cards, but didn't really add much value to the clan. Similar to Royal Paladin, OTT was missing its key support from those sets that were skipped, support that would elevate it into one of the big 3 as well. I know, I keep teasing these guys to ya, but we do get to talk about the first of these big 3 in the next video, with Goddess of the Full Moon Tsukiyomi, who took a good amount of the top spots in the 2012 Championship Series. None of the 4 cards here will be widely used, aside from this one list that used 1 copy of Omnimuji of the Moonlit Night as essentially a 5th Battle Sister Mocha. Moving on next to Kagero, they received a total of 5 cards, which included their very first Limit Break unit, Dragonic Lawbreaker. Lawbreaker had a very interesting skill where, on Limit Break, you could counter blast 1 in your main phase to bind all of your opponent's rearguards. Then, at the beginning of the end of that turn, you force your opponent to choose 4 of those rearguards and place them back on the field. Any remaining rearguards are put into your drop zone. This effect would at most result in the opponent losing 1 rearguard if they had 5, the max number of rearguards they could have on field at this time. However, this also meant you removed all of your opponent's intercepts for the battle phase of this turn. Your opponent would be forced to guard using only cards from their hand. Lawbreaker had a second effect that allowed it to gain power if your opponent had a small amount of units on field, which its Limit Break guaranteed. Kagero players did manage to make use of this card and some of the Narukami cards from set 6 to enhance their builds. Here's a list from the 2012 Championship Qualifier in France, from the runner-up William Astol.
This list includes 2 cards that we'll be going over in the next video. As for the rest of the list, you can see a lot of the usual suspects. Dragonic Overlord, Gatling Claw Dragon, Conroe, Bar, Armo, and Berserk Dragon.
You can also see here that PGs are being run at 4 copies. Even though Kagero always had access to Conroe to search out a PG from the deck, this format required everyone to up their PG count in order to actually be able to guard efficiently. You also see the Hex Cannon Dragon from set 6, as well as the new Vanilla Grade 2 with 10k from this extra booster. The general game plan is to filter through your deck with Armo and Dragon Monk Gojo, see your offensive and defensive pieces, while using your skills to control the battlefield. Or essentially the same game plan from the Goku Overlord deck we went over in the very first history video. Next we have Gold Paladin, arguably the biggest winner in this set since its support created a competitive build that had a massive turnout in the first ever 2012 CurlyHairedVanguard qualifiers and was also used by the winner of the Championship Series. Gold received a total of 9 cards from this set, but the main cards were the infamous Spectral Duke Dragon and its Ride Chain cards. Spectral Duke Dragon was a card that borrowed from Shadow Paladin, with its limit break allowing it to retire 3 Gold Paladin rearguards and counterblasting 2 in order to restand at the end of the battle that it attacked. It would lose the Twin Drive ability, but could keep all of the power and criticals it acquired from the previous battle and do one more drive check this battle. Even though it loses the Twin Drive ability, any unit on the Vanguard circle can perform one drive check when it attacks, unless stated by another card or effect. Spectral Duke had a leg up on the only other unit that can restand on the Vanguard circle at this time, Dragonic Overlord, in that his first attack did not need to hit for the restand to trigger. Overlord's restand only worked if its attack hit, but also Spectral Duke was not once per turn. So if you had another 2 counterblasts and 3 other rearguards to retire, you could actually restand again. Here's a list from the French qualifier from Annie van den Oelen's championship list. For the most part, this was the standard base for Spectral Duke Dragon. Aside from these extra draw triggers here, 3 comes after 2, right? So after the second Vanguard set, we've got the third set, right? Wrong! We received set 6, Breaker of Limits. This set led to a pivotal moment in Vanguard's history, as it gave a unique experience in the English format, led the groundwork for our first ever World Championships, and introduced us to the limit break mechanic that we would be seeing for many sets to come. However, maybe you have no idea what I'm going on about? No sweat, I'll bring you up to speed. There doesn't seem to be an official reason for releasing set 6 in English after set 2. It's often speculated that Bushiroad wanted to close the gap between releases for Japan and the rest of the world. The general community belief, however, is that Bushiroad wanted to switch up and balance the metagame for the English format, as sets 3 and 5 introduced decks that dominated this metagame for a long time. These will become to be known as the Big 3. We'll be discussing that Big 3 in future videos. The products we'll be talking about today introduce new clans and mechanics, but Bushiroad seemed to make a very targeted effort to make players play one clan in particular introduced in this set, Gold Paladin. They were the box cover art for set 6. They were featured as one of the 2 trial decks used by the main character in the anime for a long period of time. Received a huge wave of support in this booster set and in the first ever extra booster in the English format, Cavalry of Black Steel. Extra boosters are basically what they are named, additional booster sets. They're typically released between main sets with a smaller set list and focus, as well as supporting fewer clans. This extra booster also had its release window pushed ahead in order to release alongside this set, in order to further support Gold Paladins. In general, this was a very successful period for Vanguard as a whole. When researching for this video, it was really interesting to hear how excited people were for Vanguard at this time. There was just an overall feeling that Vanguard could potentially surpass and overcome the big 3 card games of the time. Some players even mentioned that their locals grew to the point that they had to rent out extra spaces to accommodate more players. We'll actually be covering all of these products in today's video, starting with these trial decks. Trial Deck 5 Slash of Silver Wolf for Gold Paladin and Trial Deck 6 Resonance of Thunder Dragon for Narukami were released on May 12, 2012. But what did end up happening to Trial Deck 3 and 4? Bushiroad skipped 3 and 4 featuring Nova Grappler and Oracle Think Tank for now. We did eventually receive those trial decks later on, but more on that in a future video. Trial Deck 5 Slash of Silver Wolf introduced Gold Paladin as a new clan. For those who are unfamiliar, Gold Paladin is very closely related to Royal Paladin. It similarly has the ability to swarm the field with units. However, Gold Paladin did this by searching the top few cards of the deck, instead of the entire deck like Royal Paladin typically did. The other new clan they introduced was Narukami in the Trial Deck 6 Resonance of Thunder Dragon. Narukami was closely related to the Kagero clan, but had a bit of an identity crisis at the start. It didn't have a defining mechanic or game plan when it was first introduced, but in later history videos, you'll see how this clan evolved into a much more cohesive clan over time. You might have noticed that both trial decks feature Aichi and Kai again. That's because they were the clans used by them in the anime for this new anime season. I won't give any details to prevent spoilers, but Gold Paladin and Narukami will be the main focus for a while. The trial decks also introduced a new mechanic, Limit Break. Limit Break looked like this on cards. To activate Limit Break, you needed to have the same or more cards in your damage zone as the number written on the symbol, which was usually 4 or 5. Limit Break unlocked powerful abilities. However, because of the cost of having 4 to 5 cards in your damage zone, you could only activate these abilities later in the game. This also meant if you healed and ended up with less damage, or your opponent kept you at only 3 damage, you would not be able to access this ability. We'll be talking about Limit Break a lot in this video and for many videos to come, as this will be the main mechanic cards and decks will revolve around for a while. So let's quickly talk about the 2 main cards in the trial decks and their limit breaks. Great Silver Wolf Garmor was the main card for Gold Paladin, and Thunder Break Dragon was the main card for Narukami. They both had the same limit break ability that was to simply give the unit 5000 power when it attacked a Vanguard. Even though it was simple, 5000 power during this point in Vanguard was a great power boost and could make a huge difference. There isn't much else to say about these trial decks, as most of the cards in these decks weren't useful, although some cards did see some play, which we'll talk about soon. This has nothing to do with limit break, but fun fact about Garmor, it was the very first errata card in Vanguard history. Very early copies of this card in a trial deck actually referred to the concept of a deck as a library. This wording was never used again and was corrected in future printings. So, how were these decks received by the community? Some players felt that there wasn't anything really special about these two trial decks. They thought the trial decks were pretty light. For example, they didn't come with any PGs. If you remember from my previous videos, PGs were pretty expensive during this time, going from $15 to $20 each, maybe even more. They also only had one copy of the main boss unit and a vanilla starting Vanguard. Overall, the Gold Paladin trial deck was a more popular trial deck, but there were still players that loved the Thunderbreak Dragon. Moving on to the next booster set in the timeline, Breaker of Limits Set 6 was released in English worldwide on May 19th, 2012. This is one of the rare times in Vanguard's history where the booster set had an almost simultaneous worldwide release. While we got the set in May, Japan got it a few weeks earlier on April 28th, 2012. Up until that point, we were about 8 to 9 months behind Japan's release schedule. I wasn't playing at this time, but heard that many players were eager for sets 3 and 4 to come out. Like we do today, they followed what was happening overseas and got a preview of the crazy support some decks were about to receive. At that time, it was a big surprise to English players when Bushiroad was like, actually, we're gonna give everyone set 6 instead. And it was a huge letdown for those that were looking forward to those sets that were skipped. But once players learned what we were getting for the upcoming release, it generated a lot of hype and excitement. This set also changed how packs work. Now, every pack always included at least one trigger unit. This decision might have been to support the move towards decks using cards and triggers from one single clan, instead of mixed matching clans like we've been seeing up until now. We'll slowly start to see the game evolve to what we know it today, starting from here. Let's spend some time talking about the clans in this set. The 5 clans supported in this set were Nova Grappler, Grand Blue, and 3 new clans, Gold Paladin, Narukami, and Angel Feather. Starting off with Angel Feather, they received 30 cards from this set, which is pretty amazing, because up until this time, new clans only received 4 cards. Angel Feather focused on manipulating the cards in your damage zone, which I'll get into more detail later on. The key cards for Angel Feather in this set included both no-CLs, as they worked really well with Angel Feather's main mechanic and would see play for many sets to come. They also received their own triggers, such as 2 different critical and stand triggers, a draw trigger, and a special heal trigger with the Forerunner ability. This Forerunner ability allowed the trigger to be called to rear circle after being ridden upon, and could also be placed back into the deck after boosting. Essentially, you could use this trigger as your starting Vanguard and have a way to put it back into your deck. You still could only place 16 triggers in your deck total, including the starting Vanguard, but it was an interesting set of abilities on trigger units that only appeared on a total of 5 cards and haven't been done ever again. Some more highlights for Angel Feather. Not only did they get their own Limit Break unit in Circle Saw Curiel and a Mega Blast unit in Mobile Hospital Feather Palace this set, but they also received a set of Ride Chain cards. Ride Chain was introduced in the sets that English skipped, so this is the first time English players would get these types of cards. Right chain cards had effects that were only activated when you rode a specific grade 1 over a grade 0, a specific grade 2 over a specific grade 1, and a specific grade 3 over a specific grade 2, and also had effects that could help you get the cards to continue the chain. This should start to sound a little familiar because it's kind of a progression from the Superior Ride we talked about in previous videos, or more importantly, you can think of it as an early version of the Ride deck that we currently have in Standard. Hey, it's Curly, and Season 3 of the Divines anime finally aired its last episode this past week, and while I have a bunch of thoughts of my own, I wanted to see what you guys thought of the season so far. So, first off, we have episode 1, which was a bit of a weird one because some people actually saw this on the strategy presentation where they aired the entire episode. Of course, it's a Japanese strategy presentation, so there was no English subs, so a lot of you had to just make do with different fights translations, live translations of the episode. Then when it came for the episode to actually air officially, it didn't actually air officially on time because the, I guess, publishing company of the band that did the opening song put a copyright strike on the video, so it actually didn't air, which was really funny. It didn't air until like the next day. It sucked for me because I was trying to organize a watch party for this season, and of course this would be the first episode of the watch party, and that did not work. Anyways, once the episode finally aired, it seems like you guys were, overall, whether you watched it like 3 or 4 or 5 times, who knows, you guys seem to like this episode pretty decently. Then, sort of a continuation of episode 1, we saw there basically just setting up the deluxe and then setting up a fight between Kagetsu, the new character, who happens to be Now's master, and then Akina. And this episode 2 was actually just the actual fight and then completing the setup for the deluxe. And you guys seem to like this one pretty decently as well. Makes sense. They were pretty decent episodes in terms of setting up what the rest of the season is going to be. Then, here's where things start getting interesting, because in episode 3, we had the first fight of the actual deluxe. And what I did is that before every episode, I would put up a poll, trying to get you guys to predict who would win the fight based on which fight was going to happen, thanks to the preview from the previous fight. And I tried to do these, later on I got it a little bit better, but I tried to do these before the episode aired, like on Thursdays in the morning. This one I aired, this one I put up like a little bit before the episode aired, so I feel like most of you probably voted after watching the episode. All that to say is only the real ones were here before the episode aired. That said, for the actual episode itself, I think this is the episode that you guys like the most. Giving you like an 84%. I won't do crazy statistics and base it on the number of votes, but just in terms of percentage, this seemed to be the episode that you guys liked the most, which is fair. It was a very good, strong, solid episode. Media had a good showing. You got to see the tree for people that like trees, but Sagra looked great, and everything looked pretty good this episode, right? So can't say I disagree. Then we had the controversial, I want to say, episode 4, right? And this one was going to have Suzune, the brand new character, and Senka. So, most of you voted for Suzune, which I did look at these polls generally before the episode aired, so I have a good understanding of how it was before the episode and after the episode. People, whatever reason, want to come in and vote after that, right? Or they just see it afterwards. And understandably, Senka was a bit of the underdog here. Mainly because a thread that we're going to see throughout the entire season basically is, well, we got to showcase this new deck, right? So the new deck kind of has priority over the older deck. And that ended up being kind of the case with Suzune showing off her new deck, Artisaria, which unveiled the lock mechanic coming to Lyrical Monasterio, much to the Vanguard community's complete meltdown. Which may be why some of you didn't like this episode as much, but still nothing too crazy, with a lot of people just not liking that lock was back. Some people liking that lock was back. Some people thinking that lock was gonna end all of Vanguard again. Some people just hating women and upset that they have to deal with Lyrical Monasterio having their favorite mechanic. But other than that, it was an alright episode. It was pretty hyped to see Locke, even as I am Locke's biggest hater. It was a pretty fun episode, at least for me to watch. And this is also extremely true. Then we have ourselves here the very sort of tipping point, I feel like, for the season for most people, where we had Kyon versus Akina, a fight that we did not get last season, and we felt that the entire season would have ended up being. But they actually threw a curveball at us that last season, right? So here we actually get that fated showdown between the Fated King and the Destined King, with the vast majority of you thinking Akina was going to win, and that ended up being the case. with Kyon putting up a decent fight, but not being able to get the dub. And most of you, liked this episode pretty decently. I think it was a fair enough episode aside from Kyon losing, but overall, I think it was pretty well constructed. It is, ironically, two of the best decks in that format at the time, minus, I guess if you consider it set 6 and not set 7, considering set 7 wasn't out, but whatever. It was a good episode, it's fun to watch, and two characters are always good to see on screen. Though it is kind of silly how Kyon just refuses to use one of his best cards. Then, this one was the one that you guys were the most split on, I think. This one and a future one. Because next, for episode, I believe, 6, we had Now versus Erica. Two very, very popular characters for many players, and you guys were like almost split down the middle. I think before the episode aired, it was a lot closer. It was like 53 to now or something like that. But yeah, this one was a bit of a controversial one, I guess. A lot of people weren't too happy about this. Some people were. It was a whole mixed bag, because a lot of people, I feel like, throughout this season just really wanted Erica, or more specifically, not even wanted, expected Erica to do exceptionally well this season because of some underlying factors, such as the fact that she's in the entirety of the ending song and it features literally just her. So, fair play. I can understand why you think she'd have an important role this season, or I guess more specifically, the next season. But unfortunately, most of y'all were wrong. Because Now did end up winning this. And overall, most of you seemed to like this episode decently well. I think it was a fun episode. It was a bit of a shame that Liel or Morta didn't really get any crazy support out of this fight, but at the same time, neither did Varga. So it was, it was an interesting fight where I guess they sort of showed off the new support, but it was kind of underwhelming. So it was more reliant on the strength of the characters and on the actual cards that were played. I do feel that it did do a good job of characterizing both of these, characters, right? Because Erica is in a weird spot where she kind of has to, one, develop as a character that really hasn't had a lot of screen time, but also, two, develop as a character that has a literal clone of her running around in the world. So she has to find a way to, stand out on top of all of that. And I feel like this episode did a pretty good job of, introducing us a little bit more into who she is, her motivations and whatnot, and kind of doing the same thing for Now as well. Of course, this episode also was the one that ended up off-screening a couple of characters, which was a bit of a shock when that happened. And I sort of poked fun at this, making 2 polls, even though we already knew who the winner were. Some of y'all understood the assignment. Some of y'all did not, but that is totally fine. This was pretty funny either way, but we ended up seeing Megami lose to Sho, and then seeing Haika lose to Kagetsu. Off screen, we just see the results of that fight, which, is kind of interesting because this season was, I'll get into it in a little bit here, but I'll have a future video that goes into more detail, but this season of the Deluxe was leaps and bounds way better than the previous season, especially in terms of what they do off screen and on screen too. I think they did an exceptional job at that. But I've learned through this season that I feel like no matter what, people will be unhappy no matter what happens. Even if we had a season, I'm pretty sure if we had an entire season that was 52 episodes and it was just every single fight of the Deluxe, people would be unhappy because it would be boring. Even if we have a season that's 12 episodes and it's just pure fights, people will find it boring because there's no story plot. Even if we have an episode that is 12 seasons and they focus on the story and cut out all the fights, people will be upset because a lot of the fights are cut out. So, people are just going to be unhappy no matter what, but it is what it is. Then we had a break between this episode and the next one. So I wanted to ask and go over 2 things. First things first is we got the reveal of what we will later on know to be Haruka. But I was wondering what you guys thought about this because she was kind of mentioned in a flashback, or not even a flashback, just an image, right? And we had no idea who this character was. The fuck? I actually really thought that throughout this was originally I thought it was Kagetsu's original master who struggled with, I guess, figuring out how to play Vanguard, and then they just died. That was my thought process. Turns out I was completely wrong with that. The fuck? Then we had what I guess you guys would consider a filler fight, but I thought it was pretty important, which was Taizo versus Michiru. This was a non-deluxe fight, and it was just to sort of, in that episode, explain what happened to Michiru, go into what he's been doing this entire time while everyone was doing their whole fated thing, and like setting him up for the next season. And this is probably the least liked episode, which is pretty interesting from you guys, that you just did not like this episode. I don't know if it's because you don't like Michiru, or you don't like the fact that it deviated from the deluxe, or what it was. I thought it was fine, you know, it was interesting to see how Michiru recovered from his coma, and, you know, doing his thing, and, getting up to speed and getting into the deluxe and all that stuff. I feel like that was a necessary episode, so I don't really understand the hate for it, but I guess it wasn't the strongest episode either. Which, like, I guess you guys just thought it was mid, but, like, that's fine. But you guys just didn't love it, which is, I guess, whatever. This was interesting, though. I really would have enjoyed this episode, but my fiance is probably going to end up playing that because it is Mystery Camp. And it's kind of similar to Magnolia and Magnolia Mask, the two decks that she plays the most, right? But I don't really care about Raziel and Odom. I just don't really feel super interested in the deck, and those three decks are really expensive, right? So I'm even less incentivized to play them. We're gonna get a triple rare here in the Drag Ritter Badia here, who is going to be for Alecalibra. So when it is placed on the rear, you look at the top 7, choose up to one card that's not her with the overcharge or the order from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. Then if you revealed a card, choose a card from your hand and put it into your soul or discard it. So helps you build up soul, if anything. Then it also says, on overcharge, this gets 10k, right? So the usual overcharge sex, where if it's chosen by Alecalibra, this unit gets 10k power. So it becomes a 15k plus, right? Because Alecalibra gives them 5k normally. So this guy's kind of interesting because it's like if his attack is 23 or more, he gets another 5k, so he's automatically 28. So pretty interesting. So on Persona Ride, he's automatically 28. Here's the anti-G-Zone card for Keter. Here's another overcharge card. Here is some random vanilla card. Here is the Destined Timepiece. You only need one of these, but this is for Liel Odom. So it's very similar to the I forgot what they called it, but the self-modification game, I think it's Set 7, Rampage of the Beast King, released on September 29th, 2012, as the 5th booster released in the English format of Card Fight Vanguard. If you didn't already know, the early English releases had an altered release schedule.
So we have Set 7 releasing after Set 3 and before Set 4. You might have guessed it from the name, but this set was
Heavily focused on fleshing out Great Nature, with a whopping 40% of the cards in this set dedicated to the clan. Also, around this time, we got the first ever Card Fight Vanguard World Championship qualifiers. Want to know how the first qualifiers turned out? Or if Great Nature bared their fangs in it?
Stay tuned and we'll find out.
Set 7, Rampage of the Beast King, had a total of 102 unique cards and supported 6 clans: Oracle Think Tank, Gold Paladin, Angel Feather, Dark Irregulars, Pale Moon, and Great Nature. Great Nature was the main focus of the set, receiving a total of 38 cards, the most a clan has received in a single set so far. Dark Irregulars and Pale Moon continue their wave of support from the previous set, getting 21 and 23 cards respectively. Oracle Think Tank and Gold Paladin only received a total of 8 cards each. And finally, Angel Feather received the least amount of support, with just 4 cards for the clan in this set. Every single booster box of this set also included a promo card inside all sealed first edition printings. The Royal Paladin card, Alfred Early. He was a grade 3 with 10k attack who could call out a Blaster Blade from your soul when you rode him. While in the English release we got Alfred Early, we did not get the deck dividers that the Japanese release got, unfortunately. These dividers featured arts from triple rare cards released in this set, such as White Hair in the Moon's Shadow Pelennor from Gold Paladin, Chief Nurse Chamishil from Angel Feather, Guardian of Truth Locks from Great Nature, and finally Dark Lord of Abyss from Dark Irregulars. Some of these clans actually received even more support in the next wave of tournament promo packs released for the English format. This pack arrived in October and included 6 cards this time instead of 3. Let's quickly go over them. High Dog Breeder Siren was a grade 2 from Royal Paladin who could counterblast 1 on place to give one of your units with the race of High Beast 4k power to the end of your turn. Battle Sister Omelette was a grade 1 from Oracle Think Tank who could gain an additional 3k power if you had no cards in your soul. Black Mane Witch was a grade 1 from Gold Paladin with 6k power that could retire another Gold Paladin rearguard to look at the top card of your deck and either call one Gold Paladin from among that or put it on the bottom of your deck. Flirtatious Succubus was a grade 2 from Dark Irregulars who could Soul Charge 1 on place. Cycling Actor was a grade 2 with 8k power from Pale Moon that could give one of your units 2k power to the end of the turn. This was the same effect, grade, and power line as Breaker Holstein from Great Nature, the last card in this promo pack. This wave of promos is vastly superior than the previous 2 since these cards could actually be used in competitive decks. Black Mane Witch and Flirtatious Succubus were actually highly sought after. Let's take a look at how these clans were further supported in Rampage of the Beast King. We spent a lot of time on Oracle Think Tank last time, so we'll start with them this time. OTT received 8 cards, most of which did not help the Tsukuyomi deck we discussed in the last video. Instead, we'll see the start of
Soulless Witches as a deck with this set. We actually already talked about the main Vanguard for this deck all the way back in Set 2, Onslaught of Dragon Souls, with Scarlet Witch Coco. As a recap, she had 2 effects.
The first effect said that during your turn, if you had no cards in your soul, she gained 3k power. The second effect activated when you rode Coco as your Vanguard. and if the number of cards in your soul is 1 or less. At that point, you could then counterblast 2 to draw up to 2 cards. The Tsukuyomi deck could never use Coco because it needed to do the opposite, which was have 6 cards in your soul. This set gave Coco 4 cards, making it a playable deck, starting with the grade 0 starter, Little Witch Lulu. When you rode a grade 3 OTT Vanguard, her skill let her call herself out from soul. Then, when she was placed, you could pay the cost of taking 2 Oracle Think Tank cards from your soul and putting them into your drop so you could draw 1 card. This allowed you to pull up the remaining grade 1 and grade 2 you rode from your soul turns prior to completely empty out your soul, which now meant Coco's on-ride skill could be activated, if you sequence this correctly. In Vanguard, when card effects trigger at the same time, they go into standby, and you choose the order to resolve them in. You would ideally choose the order that benefits you the most. So in this case, you can sequence Lulu's effect to go first to empty out your soul, and then you'd be able to activate Coco's skill to draw cards. The other 3 cards for Coco in the set benefited from having no cards in your soul. The grade 2, Battle Sister Glace, and the grade 3, Sky Witch Nana would both gain 3k power if you had no soul. Emerald Witch Lala was a triple rare grade 1 that on place could allow you to discard a card from your hand to draw 1, but of course only if you had no cards in your soul. You could even consider the Battle Sister Omelet promo we discussed a little bit earlier as the 5th support card, as it also benefited from having no cards in your soul. The remaining 4 cards were cards with effects every clan would end up receiving. Like I mentioned, Tsukuyomi didn't get any support for this set, and her build remained the same from the last time we discussed her. Tsukuyomi remains as a rather powerful deck in this format regardless. Soulless Witches, on the other hand, became an actual playable deck thanks to this set. Here's a quick peek at what the deck looks like, but we'll go over it in a bit more detail when we discuss the qualifier this came from, as Soulless Witches actually topped the 2012 Tokyo qualifiers with this list. Angel Feather was a clan that was introduced in set 6 and focused on manipulating cards in your damage zone. While they had a solid debut, they unfortunately only received 4 cards this set, 1 of each grade. The grade 0 Hope Child Turiel was a new starting Vanguard for the clan with the Forerunner ability, and another ability which allowed it to counterblast 1, put itself into soul so that you could swap out a card from your hand with 1 in your damage zone. At first glance, this effect seems like it was worded strangely. It had a continuous effect that required you to have an Angel Feather Vanguard. Then, if you met that condition, that unit would gain another effect that was an Axe skill. An Axe skill means that you get to choose when to activate the effect in your main phase. Couldn't they just have dropped the continuous skill and added to the Axe skill that you needed an Angel Feather Vanguard? Well, not exactly. This was done so that you could only use this card in Angel Feather decks. Without that continuous skill, you could potentially use this card in a deck of any other clan. Let me explain. In Vanguard, you can always pay the cost for a skill even if you don't meet the requirements for the rest of the skill. This is because you typically follow the rule of do the most you can when it comes to interpreting card effect text, meaning you keep going until you hit a roadblock, or you continue until you no longer can. So if a unit had a cost to put itself into soul and then search for a specific card in your soul, you could first pay the cost to put that unit into soul, then reach the text that asks you for that specific unit. If you didn't have that specific unit in your soul at that point, then the effect would just stop resolving right then and there. But you would gain the potential benefit of putting a card into your soul after paying the costs. So if, for example, the continuous skill was not there for Hope Child, you could play this card in, let's say, a Kagro deck that included some Angel Feather cards. you would be able to counterblast 1, put Hope Child into Soul, and put an Angel Feather card from your hand into the damage zone. Then, when it came to resolving the rest of the skill, you would fail to proceed, as you didn't have an Angel Feather Vanguard. This usually does not matter, as you don't always want to pay the cost for no reason, as it is often wasteful. However, this cost can be beneficial to pay, as you would not only gain a card in your soul, you would also be able to put a card into your damage zone, possibly giving you access to Limit Break if you were, for example, at 3 damage beforehand. All this to say, this is still a period of time where the game let you play any card from any clan in any deck. However, we continue to see cards locked to specific clans, as Bushel was most likely trying to use this to balance out the game. We're going to continue to see more quirks like these in future card effects, including the infamous Lord effect for some time until the rule changes and the clan restriction is enforced. We'll also eventually stop seeing costs being listed at the start of effect text and instead be listed when the effect actually calls for the cost. This type of structure will avoid situations like the one we have here with Hope Child. But continuing with the Angel Feather support in this set, they received a grade 1 and grade 2 that every clan would eventually end up receiving, but with a unique effect that you would think it was only a card for Angel Feather. Doctoroid Micros and Doctoroid Megalos were 6k and 8k grade 1 and grade 2 respectively that could, at the cost of Counterblast 1 when placed, take the top card of your deck and put it into your damage zone. Then, at the end of your turn, you could choose a card from your damage zone and put it into your deck and shuffle. This could be useful for putting cards you wanted back into your deck, like triggers. But the main use of this was to activate your Vanguard's Limit Break. These cards would become referred to as Limit Break enablers by players. The last Angel Feather card in this set was the new triple rare grade 3 with Limit Break, Chief Nurse Shamsiel. Shamsiel had 2 skills. The first skill was tied to Limit Break and allowed you to, on her attack, choose a card from your hand to put it into your damage zone. Then you took a card from your damage zone and put it into your hand. This effect worked well with the second skill that gave this unit 2k power anytime a card goes into your damage zone. This was the same effect as the grade 1 and grade 2 Pegasus we discussed when the clan first debuted in set 6. Angel Feather received a better Limit Break unit this set, as well as their own Limit Break enablers, and a new grade 0 starter that helped their game plan a little bit. However, this was not enough to make them that much more competitively viable than they were prior. The clan did manage to earn a top 8 finish or 2 in the championship series, as well as have some solid representation overall. Grey Nature was a clan that debuted with Bermuda Triangle in set 2, on side of Dragon Souls, but with only 4 cards each. This time, they received 38 cards, more than 9 times what they previously had. These included a PG, several triggers, as well as grade 1 and grade 2 Limit Break enablers. They also received several other cards with effects we've seen on other cards from different clans. Great Nature's aesthetic was also pretty clearly defined at this point, as they were all animals in the pursuit of knowledge. As for their game plan, I mentioned last time that they were similar to Tachikaze, a clan that focused on retiring their own rearguards. Tachikaze did this to gain power, but Great Nature had a different approach to this. We can use one of the grade 3 triple Rs in this set to show what I mean with School Hunter Leopold. Leopold had 2 effects. When it attacked the Vanguard, you can choose one of your other Great Nature rearguards and have it gain 4k power to the end of the turn. But then, at the beginning of your end phase, you have to retire that unit. Many cards in Great Nature will have this type of effect, granting some sort of advantage but having the downside of retiring the unit at the end of that turn. We actually see a grade 2 and grade 1 with this same exact effect, the triple rare Binoculus Tiger and double rare Monoculus Tiger in this set. These 3 cards actually all received SP copies in this set and were highly sought after cards in the set. The other effect of Leopard was actually tied to Limit Break. It worked with your first effect and allowed you to counterblast 1, to return a unit that was retired during your end phase back to your field. One key strategy that emerged from these effects is the ability to stack multiple retire end of turn effects onto a single unit. Even though each effect required you to retire that unit, you only needed to retire that one unit one time to fulfill all of these stacked effects. One of the best targets for this strategy were any of the Hamskade trio: Pencil Squire, Pencil Knight, and Pencil Hero. They all shared the same effect. When they went to the drop zone at the end of your turn, you could counterblast one, add a card with the same name as that card from your deck to your hand. It's almost like you never lost a card to begin with. Great Nature also received a pair of Ride Chain cards this set. This pair of grade 0 to grade 3 cards would be your ideal ride targets in most decks, and have effects for continuing the chain, as well as effects that benefit your clan. We've seen how important these have been in Gold Paladin, Oracle Think Tank, and Royal Paladin, so let's see what the Great Nature one was like. The grade 0 Schoolyard Prodigy locks had the more usual ride chain effect of searching the grade 2 or grade 3 of the chain from the top 7 of your deck when you rode the grade 1 of the chain over it. This was different from the ride chain effect given to OTT and Royal Paladin, which let you look at the top 5 to ride a card. The grade 1 Bringer of Knowledge locks had an effect that only activated when you rode the grade 2 of the ride chain over it. This effect would allow you to choose 2 of your Great Nature rearguards and give them an ability. That said, if they were retired during your end phase, you could draw 1 card for each of them. This is the same effect that the grade 2 Schoolyard Prodigy locks would have when you rolled the grade 3 over it. All 3 of these cards also gained 1000 power continuously if you had the previous card of the chain in your soul. The grade 3 RRR of the ride chain, Guardian of Truth locks, also had one more effect. This was not tied to limit break and actually allowed you to give one of your rearguards 4k power and an additional critical until the end of the turn. However, it would retire that unit at the end phase, and it also had a cost of Counterblast 2 and discard a copy of your grade 3 triple rare Guardian of Truth locks from your hand. This ride chain was probably one of the weakest we've seen so far. The grade 3 locks effect was interesting and one of a kind at the time, as the only way to give a rearguard a crit at this time was to check a critical trigger. The grade 2 and grade 1 of the ride chain didn't offer you any advantage, as you needed to have 2 rearguards on board a turn prior to riding them in order to use their effect. On top of this, the effect that the grade 1 and grade 2 gave to the rearguard only activated if the rearguard was retired at the end phase. So you would still need to play a minimum of 2 other cards who had a skill to retire those previously mentioned units, so you can then retire them and draw 1 to 2 cards in your end phase. Great Nature went from barely existing for a few sets to having almost as many cards as Royal Paladin, one of the first 2 ever clans introduced in the game. This, however, was not enough to elevate the clan to the same level as Royal Paladin, as it would receive 0 tops in the championship qualifiers. Even though this wave of support made Great Nature playable, it still wasn't competitively viable in the current format, possibly due to a majority of the cards being cyclers that all clans had access to. Although we don't have any topping list, here's what a Great Nature list might have looked like at the time. Gold Paladin finally got their second wave of support in a main booster set. Gold Paladin was already seen by many as the top dog since their last wave of support from the extra booster, Cavalry of Black Steel, but now they got elevated even more. They received a pair of grade 1 and grade 2 limit break enablers, they received an extra draw trigger as well as a clone of the Line Heat from set 2. Great Nature also received one of these cards in this set, by the way. The remaining 4 cards would actually end up seeing play. We've got 1 of each grade, so let's start with the grade 0 first. Spring Breeze Messenger was a new starter with the Forerunner ability. It had another ability that allowed you to counterblast one and put itself into soul after the attack it boosted hit a Vanguard. Then you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck to call out up to 1 Gold Paladin unit from among them. This unit would have to be called out as Rest, however. You would then put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. This is very similar to the effect of the Spectral Duke ride line and the Vivian we've talked about before. The Grade 1 double rare Listener of Truth Dean Drain was a card that would actually see play in both Gold Paladin variants at the time. Whenever Dean Drain was placed from your deck, you could Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. This made Dean Drain one of the chase cards from this set, along with the next card in the Grade 2 Lop Ear Shooter. Lop Ear had one effect that activated whenever it was placed on Rearguard Circle from your deck. The effect was to, at the cost of discarding a card from your hand, you could look at the top 3 cards of your deck and call up to 1 Gold Paladin from among them, while putting the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. The last card Gold Paladin received was another big chase card, and is the card that you really wanted to hit off the Spring Breeze Messenger if you could. The Grade 3 triple rare White Hair in the Moon's Shadow Pelennor. Pelennor had 2 effects. If this unit was placed on rear from deck, if your opponent was on a Grade 2 or greater Vanguard, you could discard a card from your hand and ride Pelennor as your Vanguard. This could happen even if you were still on Grade 2, or even if you already attacked with your Vanguard. This gave Gold access to not only a skip ride, but also an additional Vanguard attack if they could get lucky from the top 3. It is interesting to see the power creep here, as we had Gold Paladin originally only calling cards from the top 1 of their deck, set 6, then in the extra booster started to look at the top 2, and now we see them looking at the top 3. They've even gone as far as to have superior rides mid-battle that gives you extra attacks. Anyway, Pelennor also has another effect. This one was tied to Limit Break. When this unit attacked, you can put 2 of your Gold Paladin rearguards to the bottom of your deck in any order, and then give 2 of your Gold Paladins 5k power. This was almost the same distribution of power as Soul Saver Dragon, just 5k short. Gold Paladin continued to stay on top with this wave of support, with both of their Spectral Duke and Ezo builds seeing a lot of play and tops throughout this upcoming championship series. And we'll see a list using
Alright, I had to read over cards and stuff because it's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
But the only reason I picked Spikes
Uh-huh.
is because Spikes, I really like playing Spikes in Zero. I think like early Spike cards are very well designed.
Yep.
Hopefully, I'll try not to misplay today.
Yeah, I'll try to do the same. I will say my list may be a little jank. So we're maybe in for a good time, maybe in for a sweep. We'll see. Hey everyone, welcome to History of Fights, which is what I'll be calling this until I get a better name. I'm Curly, and I'm back with some more retro fights. This time we're still in set 2, Onslaught of Dragon Souls, and today I'm joined by my good friend and the person that actually helped me get into Premium for the very first time, Kokurin TCG. How are you doing today, buddy?
It's going well. Thank you for having me.
Curly, and set 7 Moonfangs and Cerulean Blaze comes out today in English, and with the release of this set, Lyrical Monasterio finally gets their own soul front. So today, let's find out whether or not your lyrical deck needs to play this card.
So, first things first, before we get into Lyrical Monasterio, I want to go over my previous video we can check out somewhere. the link to that, where with the release of set 6, I went over the original first 5 nations and went over whether or not they needed to use their soul fronts, right? So I wanted to sort of recap on that and maybe make some updates, and then we can go into Lyrical Monasterio. So, starting here with Dragon Empire, these were the decks that I had listed that you could consider to play these soul fronts. Today I'm also going to be adding an additional tier for each nation, which is which basically means I guess you can make an argument for, but you can more than definitely do without it, right? Whereas like the actual nation tier is one where it would be a good inclusion. As usual, these are just suggestions and opinions, not facts, even though my opinions are, always correct, so they can be treated as fact. But these are mine and mine opinions alone. So this is what I had said last time, and I think for the most part, this generally stays the same aside from maybe Alcalibra. So I felt the same way with Alcalibra, especially after, seeing some of the comments you guys left. Alcalibra's I feel like it generates its own soul, and you probably would rather play a different type of trigger in that slot. And that's something that I feel like I didn't emphasize enough in the previous video, is that while some decks may need soul, which means they could play the soul fronts to fill up their soul that way, that doesn't mean that necessarily that deck wants to play